What's going on, everybody? This is Dwayne Sanderson from Yokchi-Conscious Spoken Word. Our podcast is called The Awakening Moment, where we discuss some deep topics about energy, life, subconscious mind, get into detail of requesting some of our thoughts. But before we even get into the podcast, I'd like to shout out our sponsor, Yokchi-Conscious. You can find them on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as well. And don't forget to subscribe to your YouTube channel. You can subscribe to Yokchi Healing Arts on YouTube and Yokchi-Conscious Spoken Word. And on Yokchi-Conscious Spoken Word, you can find our instrumental, our poetry, and our podcast. Again, welcome to Yokchi-Conscious Spoken Word podcast. You can find us on Spotify under Awakening Moment playlist. Alright, today's topic we're going to talk about is called the fractured mind. You may ask me or ask yourself, what is the dude talking about fractured mind? What I'm actually talking about is your mindset. But before we even get into talking about fractured mind, we're going to be give you a jump start on what I'm talking about. So for instance, when you see a tree, what is it that exactly do you see when you see a tree? I ask a lot of people that same question. So a lot of people give me the answer. They say, I only see a tree, I see the leaves, I see the limbs, I see it growing to a certain point, right? That's understandable because that's how we're mentally programmed to see the tree. We're not mentally programmed to see the tree for what it actually is or meant to see anything else in that aspect. So we're programmed or preset idea of what the tree is. But along with those preset ideas, we lose our self-awareness and we lose our self-being, and our spirit don't drive and we don't get our spirit what we want it to do. So when I see a tree, this is how I see a tree. When I see a tree, I just don't see the tree for the limbs, the bark, and the grass that's growing around it. I ask myself the question, what is the root of the tree doing? Because the root has to be planted deep into something for it to be growing to that extensive amount. And how far does that root go? You know what I'm saying? So we have to see the tree for more than what the tree is, because the tree gives us so much. So when I see the tree, I'm like, so if the tree is growing deep down into the ground, and it's growing under the ground where the ground is dark, right? And it's in darkness, but yet still it can find its positive way of actually nurturing itself to grow to that big. You have to now ask yourself is, how come we're not doing it? So how come we're not definitely rooting ourselves in Mother Nature and growing to be that expansion of that tree, where the aspect is our hands and our feet is the limbs of the tree, and our here is the extension of like the leaves, right? So where I'm going with this is that if the tree itself could grow so deep down that it comes out with such a positive outlook, we need to take a stock and say, okay, we need to mentally reprogram the idea of how we see things, or the idea we see a cat or dog or whatever the case may be, because there's always more to these things that we think. Alright, so from that aspect, let's jump into our topic. So we're talking about the fractured mind, okay? The mind, I'm still learning about the mind in that aspect, because the mind is such a vast place. There's so many pathways. There's neurological pathways, there's synapse, how to trigger them, how suggestive auto-suggestion work to be able to unlock a certain part of our brain. But a lot of time, if you notice, when we drive a car, we have to learn how to drive a car based on example, and then we naturally do it, so we follow those instincts, right? So what I'm going with the fractured mind is this. If you look at a superhero, let's go for Batman, because Batman's a sociopath. Batman's mind was fractured from a childhood. So Batman's trauma in the comic books was his parents dying. So with trauma comes a fractured mind, and your concept of life change. So when Batman's mind was fractured, his way of seeing the life or what's around him become very different than how a regular person that haven't gone through any deep trauma. We all gone through trauma. Some of us take it differently. Some of us use it to be able to excel, right? Batman now turned himself into a superhero as a way of justifying his trauma as a child, right? And if you check out on my Spotify, there's a poetry called Fractured Mind. It gets deeper, right? So as Batman mind becomes fractured, right, in that aspect, his emotions become fractured. He becomes emotionless. He doesn't necessarily care, but he wants to create a better world for himself in his own mind, right? So now I'm going to flip side and say, okay, as human beings, we're not Batman or Superman or whatever the case may be, but you realize that all superheroes' minds are fractured because they want a better place to be, but they have to do certain things to get there. So Batman was in the dark, just like the tree was, roots grow right down into the dark. So Batman was in the dark, but he had to climb himself out of that dark pit to be able to be something more and positive when we look at Batman. Right? So here's the flip side. So if you're having a child, right, and you get pregnant, the thing is that the child itself is going to be an essence of you because it's rooted down in the womb of a woman. And the man's sperm is the extension that creates it. So if two individuals are fractured or not really fully healed their wounds from past relationship or whatever is going on through their life, so that genetics from the man and the genetics from the woman is now passed down into the child, right? The reason why I say that because everything's on energy, everything's on frequency. So if the man hasn't healed his wound and his trauma, and the woman hasn't healed his wound or trauma, now you're creating that genetics and you're placing it into the newborn. And then guess what? That newborn baby is now in the womb, right? And then as my poetry goes, like, as she eat it, the spawn of the unwanted transgress into the junction of the fallopian tube into the pandemic chaos within the womb. So even as the baby is growing and it's rooted inside the womb, the baby's still listening. It may not hear your voice, but it's still feeling the frequency, the emotions that is attached to both parent. Right? So as the child grows within that womb, the energy of both parents is actually connected and creating the offspring. So sometimes you come out and the child comes out, you're like, wow, that child has the same mannerism as I do, or the same mannerism as the mom. So sometimes that emotional or frequency takes over and you're wondering how come the child is behaving like that. Because what it is because your mind is fractured and you haven't fully healed the fractured part of your mind, and then creating an offspring has those frequencies and energy in that DNA. Right? So that's where I'm coming with the concept of the fractured mind. Alright? So the other part of it is, with this fractured mind, let's go deeper. So let's imagine with your fractured mind, if you understand how to heal your fractured mind. So once you're able to understand the trauma that's connected to these emotion or your fractured mind or fractured thought or your doubt or your insecurity, once you understand the root, like the tree roots itself down to understand itself into Mother Nature. So you yourself now need to root yourself in the sense of understand your deeper inner being and understand your thought process. So by understanding your thought process of your fractured mind, you're now able to find the root cause of why these emotions are lingering in the Pandora box of your mind. Because once you understand these emotions, the fractured part of it, you can literally pull it out, put it on paper, write it down, understand the emotion, the feeling, the concept. Once you understand that root cause of it and you pull it out, that emotion no longer has power over you, or that fractured thought no longer has emotion or power over you. Because again, if you're given these thoughts the power, of course it's going to take over you, and then you make rash decisions based on the root emotion that's always been there and lingering, right? So that's what I consider a fractured mind. I know I'm fractured, but the understanding is, as a hypnotherapist, I had to work through my own emotion, own understanding of what some of the root causes it is, so this way I can now counteract it or get better at it and let go of it, and let go and let live, right? So, and that is the concept of a fractured mind. The other concept is that as the child grows up within the womb, right, and it's listening, right? So once a child is listening on the frequency, hasn't understand how to speak yet, but it's listening on the frequency as it grows over those 9 months, right? If you now take the time out and actually create suggestions while the child is in the womb with positive music and positive reassurance of the child, and you speak to the child, you give it nurturing, just like you would water a tree for it to grow. As you water the child with positive emotion, positive frequency, positive food intake, which is important, because if you're nurturing yourself with positive food intake, now you're nurturing that energy that's within the child, and you're nurturing your body as well. So then when the child comes out, it's coming out strong, healthy, with positive suggestions in its mind, preset by energy frequency that you yourself has created, versus as the child come out into society gives it its own preset and categorize it where it should be, and based on the surrounding it grows up different. So if you imagine now, if you could catch that before the child comes out and start to create it with suggestion, write soft music, how you want things to be, and also within your own atmosphere, your own house with the two couples, and you guys become in a harmony, become like a yin and yang, become a balance where everything is moving together. What happens? You reduce the fractured mind concept, because now you as a man is healing, and as a woman, she's a woman is healing, and in return you create a balance of yin and yang for you and your child, right? So, and that's where I want to come from with the fractured mind concept, is once you do that, it makes a world of difference, and you could be able to have a positive outcome in your mind, right? Just like every superhero, they come with great powers, they come with great gifts. It's all about the responsibility. As Batman realized his great responsibility from his childhood of being just and getting rid of bad people, as Superman realized that he has a purpose in life, we're no different than those superheroes, because we're, as human beings, are still fractured. So once we understand the root cause of these fractured thoughts and doubts, we're able to now become our own superhero in our own mind, because the mind's a powerful thing. So it's whatever you tell the mind, it's gonna do, because guess what? Your hands and feet is a physical extension of your subconscious mind. So keep that in mind. So your hand and feet is a physical extension of your subconscious mind. Woo! I'm having way too much fun. Again, so that's what I want to say. But listen up for our next podcast. It's probably going to be an automatic writing or deja vu. So any one of those two, but I'll post it. But thank you again for listening and watching Yokchi-Conscious Spoken Word podcast. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube, and on all streaming platforms. I just want to shout out Yokchi Healing Arts for being our sponsor and taking good care of us. And you can find Yokchi Healing Arts on Facebook, Instagram, and go check out their website. Thanks again. Wait from Yokchi-Conscious Spoken out. Have a good one.